My Ecuador journey begins in the middle of the night as I touch down in Quito, the capital city. I'm whisked to my hotel in a cab, and after 2 hours of sleep, I'm out on the road and I'm getting my first looks at the country in the daylight. In today's outing, we're chasing down two giants. First is the Andean Condor, the largest raptor in the world. And then the second is the largest hummingbird in the world, correctly named Giant Hummingbird. My entire 10-day trip is in the central part of the country known as the Highlands, where its harsh altitude can be tough on the non-acclimated. And despite the high altitude, large swaths of land up here are still fertile and used for farming and agriculture. And something else that thrives at Ecuador's higher elevations is its hummingbird population. This black-tailed train bearer was the first of many hummingbirds we would see on the day. Also in abundance in the farming fields of the Highlands are these Andean gulls, and at this brief stop we saw about 70 of them. We continued up the road a short distance, and then our guide suddenly stopped the vehicle. We noticed two large silhouettes flying over the peaks. It was unmistakable what they were. We were seeing our first condors of the day. We tracked their flight and noticed that they were all roosting on this cliffside, and there were more than just two. We counted at least 10. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, more would appear in the sky and would come and join the rest of the flock on the cliff. And just when we thought they had all settled in their roost on the cliffside, they surprised us and all took flight and flew overhead in what was one of the most spectacular things I saw on the trip.
You're seeing 10% of the population of Ecuador right now.
The condors got higher and higher as they circled overhead and eventually faded off into the distance as they moved their way west. We realized then that if we had shown up even 10 minutes later, we would have missed them completely. After the condor adrenaline had worn off, we did a small hike down to this beautiful stream where we started to see a few of the more common species of the area. Which included this black flower piercer and then this brown-backed chat tyrant. We continued further up the road, and as we walked around, we continued to see more common species for the area, which of course were all lifers for us. Then our guide pointed our attention halfway up the hillside where an unknown raptor looked to be eating something that it had just caught. Once we got a closer look, we determined that it was actually a male cinereous harrier, very similar to our northern harrier. We were witnessing the gray ghost of Ecuador. The harrier wasn't very cooperative as we tried to get better angles to look at what it was eating, but it would always turn its back to us. Once it was done with its mystery meal, the harrier took flight right overhead. I fired off as many stills as I could as it flew over, and I think I got a few decent ones here. Again, further up the road, we made another quick stop, and I ended up seeing one of my favorite birds of the day. These Andean ibises are special to see not only because they can only be found in a very specific part of Ecuador, which obviously we were in, but also because they are a declining species. In fact, eBird lists them as near threatened. As we entered Antisana National Park, the idea was to go down to Laguna de Maica to look for waterfowl, but we got a little distracted before we could get there. We kept hearing the call and then finally found this little guy. After giving our group a good look and us unanimously voting it cutest bird of the day, it dipped back into the forest and said, "See you later." We then made our way down to the lake, and the waterfowl viewing was difficult and mostly seen through scope. I did see this slate-colored coot somewhat up close. And then we did have a nice flyby of the yellow-billed pintail. We then made our way back to the Condor Lodge where we had a reservation for lunch, and it was where we were hoping we were going to find our last target of the day, the giant hummingbird. After lunch, we were all having a blast, taking photos of all the hummingbirds at the different feeders at the restaurant and lodge, but we hadn't seen our giant yet. But then, our driver for the tour had noticed the giant hummingbird had been circling the premises. It just hadn't come down to any of the feeders yet. We went on high alert.
Quite a variety of hummingbirds.
With still no appearance from our giant, we photographed this blue and yellow tanager in the parking lot as we were on our way out. But then, someone called out to look up on the telephone line. And there it was, in all of its silhouetted, awful light glory, But fortunately, it flew down to one of the feeders. And for about 10 seconds, we all got the shots, and I got some video that we had been hoping for the whole day. It was the perfect way to end day number 1. Near the end of the tour, we were driving in an area not really known for condors, but we saw 2 land on this cliffside. The male was displaying, and what unfolded after was pretty surprising. I'm not sure how common it is to capture Andean condors mating on film, but it was enough that my bird guide of over 30 years requested that I send him the footage. So I'm going to take that as a pretty significant event. It was pretty crazy to see. Coming up in part 2, we leave Quito behind and head to the Mindo area in the northwest Highlands, where I get hands-on with some hummingbirds. We see more colorful birds, and I witness a tanager fight.